Temba is a he, I'm a she, married to Temba, just for the record. Thank you very much. I've been asked to talk a little bit about my books. My first book, The Dream That Was Worth Fighting For, which is the name of our Facebook page, is Sister Nyari was speaking. Maybe some of you we have dreams, we're wondering. We have dreams, but you're facing so many adversaries and challenges. When the dream that I was worth fighting for is my story as a little girl who had big dreams, but faced so many adversaries. But God took me through. So if you have challenges and you're wondering how you're going to achieve your dream, and you need some inspiration, this is an award-winning book. It will be a good book for you to read. The dream, after I'd written the dream that I was worth fighting for, people inquired, how can we have got dreams, but we want like a step-by-step on how to achieve our dreams. So I wrote another book, The Dream, 12 Keys to Realizing an Audacious Dream That Impacts Generations. This is also an award-winning book, and Department of Basic Education has also approved it to be in school libraries. I just thought I could put it there for the record. So the dream, there are 12 P's, which when you read can be inspired to be from where you are to where you want to go and to achieve a dream that will impact generations. We also developed a personal development tool, the Dreamer's Daily Planner, which we produce annually. I didn't bring it, but it's a resource where one can use to just follow through your dreams. So we have a dream on a page where you write your dreams, strategies on how to achieve the dream. And we have a page where you set your goals, that's the January. So every month, what's different about the planner is every month we've got a monthly dreamers checker where you check your dreams. So we have dreams celebrated, dreams deferred, key learning points, action points, and your goals for the following month. So if you want to achieve your dreams, it's a great personal development tool. I've used it and I've seen results. We also, after that, I also wrote a book, The King's Dream for His Daughter. The King's Dream for His Daughter is a book specifically for women. Women go through challenges. This is a story of a woman who went through emotional, physical, financial abuse, but she came through. Sometimes when people go through these challenges, they're quick to say, just leave the marriage. But there's some who have gone through and they've come out and have still achieved their dreams. So if you know of someone who is in a challenging marriage or in a challenging relationship, or someone who just wants to be inspired to find their worth, because this book is inspiring women to find your worth and to find yourself and to still achieve your dreams despite the challenges. We also did prayer journal. This is also a follow-up of the King's Dream for His Daughter. The prayer journal, I believe a written prayer is half achieved, because whenever you see it, you are reminded that the prayer has not yet been answered, and you keep on pushing. So this is a journal where you can write your prayers, you can follow through. I'm just summarizing, and I've used it. It works. And I have so many prayers that I've looked back and celebrated God because I have prayed and followed through. Normally, we also think that legacy is for celebrities. But I wrote this book, which is the story of my father. I believe anyone can leave a great legacy despite who you are, where you are, the challenges that you met, where you come from. So if you want to leave a legacy, like me, like Brother Temba or Brother Mnyarazi, It's a book that you can read to be inspired to leave a legacy wherever, whatever situation you are. So we have a table there. If you would like a book, if you want the Dreamers Daily Planner, we're working on the 2025 because we produce them annually. So those are here. Some of you follow our Facebook page. We'll be advertising the Dreamers Daily Planner when it comes in a few months' time. Or you can just talk to me. If you give me your number, I can contact you when the Dreamers Daily Planner. Just help me put our hands together as we welcome my husband, Themba Mazibuko.
I'm just wondering, I've got a very powerful voice. Do I need a mic? Are you using it for anything? Or is it for recording? Pastor, thank you so much for inviting us. And thank you so much for putting this event together. I think I'll come back to Cornerstone Fellowship, just to fellowship with you guys. I really enjoy your company. If by the end of this presentation you actually think that I'm a very good presenter, I just want you to know one thing. When I was in university, I looked, I really admired a certain preacher. His name was Dr. Cleopas Chitapa. In fact, when he started the church at a very small hotel in Harare, I was one of the first congregants, there. Yeah. And when he was there, I've forgotten the name of the hotel.
Elside.
Oh, was it Elside? He actually put the first youth committee. And so it was a democratic vote to vote people into the first youth committee. But because he liked me so much, he actually forced me onto the committee. So I really admire Dr. Cleopas Chitapa. He's my favorite speaker and preacher in the whole world. Sometimes I just get his tapes and listen to them. He's really a role model to me. Good. Beloveds, I will say a lot of things in my presentation. I don't have time. But there are 3 messages that I would want you to get out of this presentation. Right. The first message, so there are 3 bullet points to this presentation. The first bullet point is that business success is 80% mindset and 20% mechanics. I just want you to reflect on that statement. I don't have much time to explain it, but just understand that success in business is 80% mindset and 20% mechanics. When we talk about mechanics, we're talking about what product are you selling. We're talking about what entrepreneurial skills do you have. That contributes 20% to your success as a business person. What mostly contributes to your business success is your mentality. And that's very, very important. I want us to appreciate that business people think differently. They are not necessarily the most educated people in the room. They are not necessarily the smartest people in the room, but they just think differently. And when they think, they actually think big. And when they think beyond their generation, and sometimes they think intergenerationally. And so when we are talking about success, and that's something, I don't have time to develop that statement, but I wish you would appreciate that business success is 80% mental and 20% physical. If you appreciate that point, then we are together. Then the second thing that I will try to attempt to do in my presentation is just to tell you about a biblical character. Now, the pastor is here. He is a fundi on doctrine. I'm not a fundi on doctrine. So it's not my attempt at all to present any doctrinal matters at all. But what I would want to do, because I've just noticed that I read the Bible differently to other people, and so I will talk to you about a certain character called Abraham. Abraham is not somebody whom you would identify in the Bible as an entrepreneur, but when I was reading about this guy, I actually began to realize that he was probably running an enterprise of some sort. Because I came across a verse in Genesis, I think it was 13 verse 2, which actually says Abraham was heavy with riches. He was very prosperous. He had flocks, he had everything. Then I came across another verse which actually talked to the fact that Abraham had about 318 trained people in his household. And he was able to go after Lot and fight kings. He must have been running some kind of enterprise. And so I will not read the Bible. That's for pastors to do. I'm not a pastor. But if I were to quote any other scripture in this presentation, it would be Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. It's a very simple verse. God is calling Abraham and he says, come out of your country, come out of your family, come out of your family, and come out of your father's house. Here is the point, beloveds. Entrepreneurship is actually a calling. If you don't believe that, I don't have time to develop the idea, but it's actually a calling. I was a very successful treasurer at a bank. Oh, by the way, before I even developed that idea, I see there are so many young people in this room. Can I just give you 3 pieces of wisdom as young people? Would you appreciate that? And this is from my own life experience. If you're a young person here, don't run away from church. Church has really benefited me in many ways. Number 1, I found my purpose in church. I found my purpose in church. One day I was attending a church in Zimbabwe. It was a Zayoja Braeside service. There was a prophet of God who just pointed at me from nowhere. And he said, you, young man, you will start a bank. You're going to start a bank, one of the most successful banks. I haven't started a bank, by the way. I've worked in the banking sector, but at least I know what my purpose is. We will be launching a bank according to our timeline in 5 years' time. At the moment, I'm actually treasurer with a startup bank called Old Mutual Bank, OM Bank. They got a license this year. And so I've learned about how banks start. So we were part of the journey of starting that bank. And so we'll be launching our own bank in 5 years' time. But how did I get to know that I'm supposed to be in business and I'm supposed to be a banker? Let me just tell you something. Don't move around without an idea of what specifically you're supposed to do. When God calls you as an entrepreneur, he calls you in a very specific manner. And that was my experience in church. And a prophet of God just pointed at me and says, you young men, you're going to make lots of money. That's what he said. Those were not my words. It was the prophet's word. And so, because I got that from the prophet of God, I've got 3 boys. Our first boy is in America. When I'm going to see him in 3 weeks' time, I'm going to travel to America and just see, my boys. When I see my boy, guess what we talk about most of the time? Guess what we talk about most of the time? We talk about business. We talk about money. We talk about the dream that God gave me in church. He understands, because this dream is so big, that I'm probably not going to fully accomplish it in my own generation. And I would have to pass on the baton stick to my children. And one of the things that I appreciate about my children is that they actually understand the dream, and their spirit resonates with that dream. So the last conversation that I had with my son, he's in university in America, he said, look, I've been reading about the Rockefeller family. I've been reading about this family. And I'm actually thinking about how we can actually build a global business empire called Duplex Bank. And that's how he thinks. And the thing that I would want us to understand in terms of a mindset, when you're an entrepreneur, you're building something that will last for generations. It's not something, when you're building a business, I've got no respect for entrepreneurs who build a business in their own lifestyle and they can't pass it to the people that come after them. I've got zero respect. Because some of the greatest entrepreneurs that I know were people that were able to pass on their businesses to their children, and those businesses have continued. And so it doesn't matter how small you start. You may start your enterprise as a side hustle, but at least think big. That's my advice to you. At least desire to live a generation and be called a father of something. And that's why I admire Abraham. Abraham is called the father of faith. And long after he is dead, we also talk about Abraham, isn't it? The third thing that I would want to talk to you about in my few minutes I want to talk to you about 10 mindsets and habits of entrepreneurs. One of the things that I did, by the way, if you are a young person, I said I would give you 3 pieces of advice, isn't it? What was the first piece of advice? Stay in church. I found my purpose in church. Stay in church. I found my wife in church. I personally, I don't know about you, seriously, they invited me to speak at a youth event years ago, and there was a lady who was leading praise and worship at that event, and guess what happened? The rest is history. But I found my wife in church. Don't find your wife at a dating site somewhere. Find your wife in church. The third thing that I would want to advise you as young people is that hone your skills in church. One of the things that I do in my business is to be a trainer and to be a speaker. Guess where I learned to speak and to present? It was in church. And so when you've got opportunities to serve in church, please do it to the best of your abilities. And that's my advice that I have, for you. I've grown up in church. I've found my purpose in church. And that's what I have learned in church. So when I finish my presentation, I'll talk to you about 10 mindsets and habits of entrepreneurs. Is that fine? Right. Did we say that success is 80% mindset and 20% mechanics, isn't it? All right. If I had time, I would have opened to you a scripture that says, come out of your country. When we are talking about entrepreneurship, and I like what Elder Nyari said to us today. She actually said there are certain myths that you have to come out of. And so God was saying to Abraham, come out of your country. By the way, let me just reference a conversation that I had with my father. I've got respect for my biological father. But there is one conversation that I will never forget in my life that I had with him. I was probably 4 years or 5 years, thereabout. What happened then is that the Pope then, his name was Pope John Paul. He came and visited Zimbabwe. My father was a Catholic, so he took us along to see Pope John Paul. Now, when a Pope visits a country, it's a big thing. It's a really big thing. So we went, we saw this important man who was waving behind an armored vehicle. And I liked everything that I saw about the Pope. So I had a conversation with my father. And I said to him, Daddy, I think when I grow up, I would want to become a Pope. I'll never forget his response to me. He said to me, no black man has ever become a Pope. You've got no chance at all to become a Pope. Forget about becoming a Pope. This is for white people. I'll never forget that conversation in my life. Now, God is calling Abraham and he says, come out of your father's house. There is a teaching that you have received in your father's house which is not consistent with your dream, which you have to come out of. There is a certain way of thinking which you have received in your country, which is not consistent with the dream that God has for you. And probably when you were growing up, you were taught that black people cannot do this. Black people cannot ascend to this level of success. You have to come out of those things. And so when God speaks to Abraham, he says, come out of your country. Your country are your limitations that you have. There are certain limitations that we have. There are certain things, I began to understand as I was growing up that there are things that white people can do probably more than black people can do, isn't it? And so come out of that thinking. And one of the things that I would want to say as part of mindset is that you need to come out of certain things. There is something that you need to come out of. When we were growing up, we were a middle-class family, but we're not living in abundance. My father was struggling. Have you actually seen people that work very hard, but they don't get much in terms of wealth? That was my father. I love my father very much. He was a hard worker. The work ethic that I have. And so when I grew up, I had this mindset that says, look, money is scarce. You have to work hard to make money. And so, in terms of mindset, all I'm just trying to say is that come out of your father's house, come out of your country, and come out of your family. When we talk about business success, there is a lot of abundance out there. This world does not have a scarcity of money. If you come from a standpoint that says the world is scarce, money is not scarce. Money is not scarce. All you need is a creative idea, and then the money will follow. And so in terms of mindset, as you ignite your business dream today, there are certain limitations that you need to come out of. There are certain myths that you need to come out of as a young person. And I've already told you one of the things that you must always be mindful about in your life. The church will produce billionaires in a few years to come. There is nothing that you will get out there in the world. And so I want us to understand exactly that there is a lot of things that are happening in the church. And I'm speaking specifically to young people. Guess what I would want to be by the time I die? Can somebody, from the little that I have said to you, if you were to look at me in 20 years' time, where do you think I will be? Obviously in church. In church, having started a bank and being a billionaire. Whenever I do a presentation, I always share my dreams openly with people so that you could hold me to account. You could hold me to account. So I'll be in church, I'll be a billionaire, and I'll own a bank. Right? Even if I am not able to do that, at the moment, we've got a training and consulting company that operates in 13 countries. But we service banks. Right? We deal with banks, we train banks, we design tools for banks. Why? Because that's what the prophet told me. You have to stay around banking. And I found that in a church setup. So don't go and start your own business outside of church. That's my plea to you. But the second plea that I also have to you is that come out of certain limitations. You see, when we talk about a business is not for a bright kids. I was bright. I'm a very bright guy. I've always known distinctions in my educational career. But one of the things that I have learned in my life is that running a business sometimes has nothing to do with how brilliant you are. Sometimes it's got to do with how much you can convince people to buy your product. Sometimes it's got to do with how you can actually manage relationships between people. Right? That's one of the things that I have learned in my life. And so one of the things that you need to come out of is this thing that says, because I'm a smart kid, I'm going to be successful. You see, when we talk about mindset, businesses are for the brave. This is a person who just starts, like what Elder Nyari was saying, and says, look, I will run with it even as a young person. Business has got to do with guts and grit more than anything else. That's what business is all about. I'm running out of time. Maybe let me go into my 10 mindsets and habits of entrepreneurs. Number one, they are visionaries. I've never seen an entrepreneur who is not a visionary. By the way, the word entrepreneur comes from a French word, which basically means to venture out and to launch. That's what an entrepreneur is. An entrepreneur is somebody who ventures out of their comfort zone. We all were born in a certain comfort zone. And what God is saying to Abraham is that come out of your comfort zone to a land that I will show you. Do you know what you can become in this life is something that you have never imagined? And when God says to a land that I will show you, He's talking about certain assets that you will own in your life that you can never quantify at all in everything that you do. So one of the things that I have learned very quickly is that don't have a vision to make money. Money is the result of the vision that you have. Have a vision to help people and a vision to solve problems. One of the billionaires that I have closely watched in my life, and I can write a book about this man, probably you know him, is an entrepreneur from Zimbabwe called Strive Masiwa. When I was growing up, have you ever heard of Strive? I used to sit next to him in church and watch this guy, right? And one of the things that I learned about this guy, in fact, in addition to Dr. Cleopas Chitapa, I never forget any sermon that Dr. Cleopas Chitapa has actually taught. In fact, if I were to meet him one day, I will recount all the sermons that, I still remember he preached while we were in university. Right, he preached Philippians chapter 3 more than anybody has ever preached that scripture. And I'll remind him about him if ever I'll meet him. But apart from Dr. Cleopas Chitaba, Strive preached a certain sermon that I will never forget from the book of Philippians. And I've watched this man. I've watched his vision. And one of the things that I have learned about entrepreneurs is that they have got a vision. And that vision is to help people. Strive's vision had to do with telecoms. He just wanted to make sure that every household in Africa has got a phone and people can communicate over a cell phone. That was his vision. And then money will follow. And so as a young person venturing out to become a business person, what is your dream and what is your vision? Is your vision clear enough? Right. My vision as a banker is basically to make sure that the unbanked, because they are unbanked people in every population, you have got access to banking service. That's my vision throughout Africa. So one of the things that I have learned about entrepreneurs is that they have got a vision. Secondly, they don't fear failure. Do you know that you are trained in life to fear failure? Right? One of the things that I will tell you as a young person is that doubt destroys more dreams than failure will ever destroy dreams, right? And that's one of if you doubt yourself, you doubt your capabilities, you doubt the word of God upon your life, you will never achieve anything in life. When I first met Strive years ago, my audit senior at KPMG said, do you know this man? He's a failure. Because Strive owed every bank money. Whatever bank we audited, Strive owed that bank money. And the thing about, we are auditing this bank and we come across what we call bad loans. Bad loans are loans for people who are not paying. There are people who don't pay their commitment. And some of those bad loans were actually Strive. He had borrowed from the bank. That was my first encounter with Strive. I'm seeing this guy who owes NMB lots of money. He owes, another bank lots of money. And that to me was failure, right? But then I saw, it was at a business function. Strive was speaking. In my mind, this is a guy who can't pay his debts. And they give him to speak. There are two messages that he said in that speech, which I will never forget. He was speaking from a verse in Philippians. I've read that verse. He says, do you know a verse in Philippians which says, our lack of fear is evidence to them of their perdition? Go and look for that verse. Everyone is chasing Strive for money. But he says, I'm not fearful of my creditors, because my lack of fear is evidence to them that they are going to be destroyed. I'd never heard anybody interpret the scripture like that. Do you know? He says everyone is saying Strive. By the way, things got so bad for Strive that he put together an intercession group and we were praying for him. I looked at his shoe that he was putting on. It was not the shoe of a business person. But he says our lack of fear is evidence to them of their destruction. And he actually came up with a principle which I have and I will always remember. He says, don't allow creditors to chase you, chase after your creditors. That was his principle from Strive. One of the things that I will tell you is that business people do not fear failure. There is what we call innovative failure. You're going to try out certain things. As I stand before you, when I left ABSA, I had lots of savings to start my business. Guess what happened to those savings in the first year of operating the business? I depleted everything. And I nearly went back. In fact, I actually went back to ABSA and said, can you please give me a job? The thing is, don't fear failure. I've been bankrupt 4 times, but I have moved on and continued. Why? Because failure, you learn from failure. And that's what entrepreneurs do. You fail, and then you reflect on that failure, and then you move on. You don't give up. I think Elder Nyari was talking about Edson, who failed 1,000 times. I have not failed as much as Edson has failed. I've only failed 4 times. But I will continue. Entrepreneurs don't fear failure. Number 3, they are courageous, they are gritty, they have got faith. Show me an entrepreneur who is going to do great things. They have got belief that things will always work out. It will come to a time in your business when things will be hard. But what I know about entrepreneurs is that they are gritty. Number 4, this is a big one. They don't hang out with average people. Right. Your company, the people that hang out around you will determine your success. And that's why God is saying, come out of your country. Come out of average people. Right. Let me give you advice as a young person who is starting out. I've given you advice, stay in church. The other piece of advice that I will give you is get a mentor. Right. Elder Nyari looks like the kind of mentor that I would like as a business person. Right. Get a mentor. I do not know of any successful business person who has never been mentored. I've been mentored myself. I've looked at Strive from a distance, and I've learned quite a lot of things from Strive. And I've had lots of mentors in my life. So that's advice number 1. But then the other piece of advice is that be very mindful of people in your circle. Right. When we moved to South Africa, we always debate with my wife. You know, the thing about being in a marriage is that as you age in marriage, your memory, our memory tends to fade in terms of the events that actually happened. So if you were to ask my wife to narrate this, because that's normally what happens. But when we came to South Africa, I said to my wife, go and be mentored by Strive Masiwa's wife. Right? Because that was very good. I knew I was going to be a billionaire. And she was mentored by Tsitsi Masiwa. He had mentoring sessions, mentored by Tsitsi Masiwa. She will have her own vision. Probably her own vision will, I am the one who took the initiative to look for, because things always change in marriage. But my vision of events, by the way, me and my wife, we live in a double-story house. She's got her story, I've got my story. So we live in a 2-story house. So my story of what actually happened is that, but she was mentored by Strive Masiwa. One of the things that I've been very strategic about in my life is to look for people that are successful and get mentorship from those people. And so as a young person, there are so many things that you do not know about business. There are so many people that can help you along the journey. Go and get mentorship, right? The reason why you need to get mentorship is so that you do not repeat the mistakes that those people have made. You need to make your own mistakes. But the worst mistake that you can ever make in your life is to repeat a mistake that another person has made, isn't it? Yeah. You've heard the expression that says, wise people learn from their own mistakes, but geniuses learn from other people's mistakes. And that's true. Let me move on. Number 5, they are persuasive in their communication and know how to handle relationships. There was a time in the Bible when Abraham and Lot are arguing. Right. Does anybody know what happened there? And Abraham says, look, we are brothers. We cannot argue. Just choose where you want to go, and I will choose where I want to go. Right? I always teach my children this. Don't fight over food. If somebody wants the food, because the world is not scarce of any material. If there is anything that my children know I hate, is for the 2 siblings to be fighting over something. I don't like that as a parent. And I always say to my children, give him, if he wants this thing, just let him take. Because the world is abundant with materials and with resources. That's how entrepreneurs think, right? And I've always said, you will never fight me for anything, just take. Why? Because there is an investment that God has given me in my life which you can never take. And it doesn't matter where I will be. By the way, I've acquired a certain net worth in my life up to now, and I'm very comfortable. But if things were to go back to where they were 10 years ago, I will make money quickly within 6 months. And the reason why I will make money quickly within 6 months is that I've learned so much in my life. I don't value money. The investment that God has made in my life is such that I can get the money back in 6 months. Right? So all I'm just trying to say is that we live in a very abundant world. And as an entrepreneur, don't fight with people, just give me tech. I can raise $1 billion if I want to raise $1 billion. Why? Because the world is abundant. Number 6, they are ruthless with their time. Entrepreneurs don't waste time. They don't waste time in meetings. They don't waste time in doing meaningless things. They create time to do things that are meaningful for them. So one of the things that I will always advise you, by the way, I've dealt with so many entrepreneurs, and I know as a matter of habit, most of the entrepreneurs that I meet, they move with a notebook. They always take notes. Right? They're always learning. By the way, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to be successful in your life, never stop learning. But also, they are very deliberate in terms of what they spend their time doing and where they spend their time doing. Number 7, they are very generous. Very, very generous. By the way, if you are a stingy person and you are not willing to invest in somebody who is needy, you will never make it in life. One thing that I have known, by the way, I used to sit next to Strive in church because I've observed entrepreneurs. Strive used to take money in his pocket. We were in Rema Bible Church at that time. Everyone was giving runs. He would take a bunch of US dollars and just put it in the offering box. That was the kind of man he was. And when my wife was being mentored by, Tsitsima Siwa, she got to know some of the figures that Strive was investing in the church that they were part of. It was millions and billions. And one of the things that I have realized is that successful people always are generous. And they always invest in people that are needy. If you are stingy, you will never be successful. Number 8, they think at a higher level. I wish I had time to develop this, but all I can just tell you is 2 points. Number 1, take some time to think. Right. I've got a time allocated in my diary where I actually think and try to be creative in my life. Because one of the things that I have seen about entrepreneurs is that they think at a different level. And one of the things that I can tell you, it doesn't matter what your income is. Maybe your income is 1,000. If you want to double it, work hard. But if you want to increase it by 10 times, think differently. It's not about working hard. So if you want to 10x your income, it's thinking differently. And thinking differently is tapping into an inner power. God is the most creative person that I know. And so when he says to Abraham, go to a country that I will show you, God is going to give him ideas. God is going to give him revelation on how this success is going to be accomplished. Some of my brightest business ideas that I have ever come up with, it's either they came whilst I was praying, they came whilst the preacher was preaching and I was in church, or sometimes they came when I'm having a shower and I'm singing. Then I remember, that's a bright idea. And some of them are very innovative idea. You might not have capital today, but one of the things that will distinguish you is being creative and being different. Think differently. There are so many innovations that have not been discovered as yet and that are waiting to be discovered. They are only going to be discovered by you, contributing. Number 9, they are coachable and are continuous learners. They are continuous learners. By the way, whatever you learned at school and whatever you're learning at school, in 5-10 years' time, that knowledge will be redundant. And one of the things that you need to always understand is that you need to be a continuous learner, continually learning. And entrepreneurs do the same thing. And then number 10, then I will sit down. I think my time is up. Entrepreneurs take care of themselves, physically and mentally. And when I visit entrepreneurs in their homes, I've actually discovered that, number 1, they exercise deliberately, taking care of themselves. They are deliberate about what they eat. They are deliberate in terms of what they watch and what they put through, what they take into their brains. And so when this year started, because I need to be a billionaire, I need to start this bank that I was talking about. I said to my wife thinks it's a radical idea, but I said to my wife, I'll be a vegetarian. Let's see how it will work out. So at least I've been a vegetarian for the past 6 months. And we'll see, because somebody said to me, meat is not good. And because I've got a long-term vision, I then said, look, I'll watch what I eat, right? And so for this whole year, I've lost about 15 kgs. And I have, because that's what I learned, about entrepreneurs, that they are deliberate. They take care of themselves, in terms of what they eat and exercise. Every day, I've had to buy a smartwatch, 6,000 steps every day, 1.5 hours of exercise every day. And that's the thing that I have learned. And one of the entrepreneurs I have learned from is Strive. Strive would tell you the same things that I would tell you. Colleagues, brethren, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed speaking to you.